Hello, today we are going to be discussing pronoun cases again, this time the objective case. Please make sure you have a copy of the notes so you can fill them in as you watch. The objective case. The objective case refers to the form of the pronoun when it is the object of a verb or preposition. Your singular objective case pronouns are me, him, her, and it. The plural objective case pronouns are you, us, and them. Objects of verbs. What do we mean by that? An action verb will have a direct object and sometimes an indirect object. For example, the ball hit the player on the chin. The action verb is hit, and the player is its direct object, the object that was hit. If you use a personal pronoun in place of the object, it must be in the objective case. The ball hit him on the chin. Notice the word him is our personal pronoun, and it is in the objective case. Object of prepositions. Prepositions, if you remember, are words that combine with a noun or pronoun to form a prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase gives more information about another word in the sentence, often explaining who, what, where, or when. Some examples. We went aboard the ship. This prepositional phrase, aboard the ship, shows where we went. We walked around the park. The prepositional phrase, around the park, shows where we walked. She fell asleep during the movie. The prepositional phrase, during the movie, shows when she fell asleep. The gift is from my aunt. The prepositional phrase, from my aunt, shows who the gift is from. I will study until dinner. The prepositional phrase, until dinner, shows when I studied. A flock of birds flew overhead. The prepositional phrase, of birds, explains what the flock is, what flew overhead. I wrapped the box in newspapers. The prepositional phrase, in newspapers, shows what I wrapped the box in. Object of prepositions. If you use a pronoun as the object of the preposition, it must be in the objective case. So, we went aboard it. We walked around it. She fell asleep during it. The gift is from her. A flock of them flew overhead. I wrapped the box in them. Notice that all of our prepositions are in the objective case. Now, the great thing about the word it, that personal pronoun, all the pronouns are in the objective case. It is the same whether it is the subject or the object. So that one makes it a little bit easier. Words like her and them, however, are different. They take different forms when you change from the subject to the object. So be careful with those. Now, if you have a compound object, you must still use the objective case when you have the compound object. So keep that in mind. So, the student saw Mrs. Blake and Mrs. Morton. The student saw Mrs. Blake and her. You wouldn't say the student saw she, so you have to say the student saw her. Adding in Mrs. Blake doesn't change that. Give your work to Mrs. Morton or Mrs. Blake. Here we have a prepositional phrase. Adding in a second object doesn't change the fact that we need to use the objective case of the pronoun. So give your work to Mrs. Morton or her. You wouldn't say give your work to she. Adding in Mrs. Morton doesn't change that. Okay, let's try some practice. I want you to pause the video now and complete the practice on your notes. You're going to underline the correct pronoun in each sentence. Remember that if it is the object of a preposition or the object of a verb, it needs to be in the objective case. Okay, pause now, please. Okay, it's time to check your answers. Number 1, his constant talking annoys Jim and me. Number 2, that book was written by Philip and her. Number 3, Mom told Billy and me to clean our rooms. Number 4, Dad bought him a new bike for his birthday. Number 5, just between you and me, the surprise party is tonight. Number 6, you can leave a message for Mrs. Woodford or me. Number 7, we told the teachers and them where to put the books. Okay. Now that you've checked your answers, you should have this handout in your packet. Go ahead and complete it. When you are done, take it to Mrs. Morton, Mrs. Blake, or Mrs. Appleby to check, along with your notes. You need to make a submission when you are done that both have been checked.